Uh, yeah, so the other thing about React and Angular and these libraries that have become very, very popular is that they rethought on how these web pages were built, how they were rendered. Right? If you notice the technique that we were using in jQuery, whenever we needed to re-update something on the screen, we didn't just reload the page, right? Instead, we went to fetch data from the server, and we strategically removed certain things. We strategically refreshed a couple of subset of the page. Okay, this technique became very, very popular. At the beginning of the century, since folks were looking for applications that were much more responsive, that not responsive as in for mobile or tablet, but responsive in that I got immediate feedback when I interacted with my applications. Yes, and it was somewhat jarring that if I needed to just maybe remove or update a small portion of my page, that the entire page had to be re-rendered, right? In a server-side rendering scheme, right? The whole page is thrown away and reloaded and re-rendered entirely. Yes, right? Even if you're removing a row, right? Instead of just removing that row and just only re-rendering that portion of the screen, the whole thing would re-render. Yes, and it was a jarring user experience. Yes, instead the technique that we looked at just now using jQuery, only that portion of the user interface needed to be updated, not the entire page. Yes, so it's more efficient. It's much smoother. The experience is much more pleasant. It's the first time that it just dawned on me on how different the two approaches are is when I still used to use MapQuest. Anybody remember MapQuest? So MapQuest, this right before Google Maps, right? In MapQuest, it was a server-side rendering of a map, and it had all the use cases that you would need. You could pan right, pan left, up, down. You can zoom in, zoom out. Right? You can interact with the map. But every time you clicked on it or you interacted with it, the whole page was thrown away, right, and re-rendered entirely brand new, right? And granted, it was sometimes fairly lightning fast. It would just flicker. It was so fast. Yes. Now, compare this to how Google went about it. Right. They used a technique where they never reloaded the page. Right. Most of the page was the same. The only thing that changed was the map. Right. And you could directly manipulate the map. You can grab it, jiggle it around. You can flick it. Right, and it would animate and gave you the experience that you were directly manipulating the data, right? And what they were doing is that as you flicked it, obviously they used threading to go fetch more parts of the map to fill in the empty spaces, right? Again, but giving you the experience that it was a very smooth, very zoom in, zoom out, very very continuous. Direct manipulation, right? And the experience was completely different, right? Even though the use cases were the same, you could still just zoom in, zoom out, pan right, pan left, right? So their technique today is the de facto standard that new applications. That's the way they do it, right? They load an initial page, and then they go fetch the rest of the content that they need, and they dynamically update the DOM, right, accordingly as you interact with it. Yes. Right, this technique is usually referred to as single-page applications, single-page applications, SPAs, SPA, right? That the page is loaded once, right, and typically is never thrown out and reloaded ever again, right? Instead, we use AJAX, right, to go fetch pieces, right, snippets of HTML, snippets of JavaScript, and then fill in the pieces individually. Make sense? Right. Obviously, this introduces all sorts of challenges. For instance, navigation. Right. Normally, the way you navigate is that you click on a hyperlink, and that hyperlink unloads the original document and then reloads an entire new document in its place. Yes. Right. In a single-page application, we don't do that. Right. Instead, we override the default navigation mechanism. And instead, we replace it with a JavaScript version, Right? So every time you click on a hyperlink, a button that you would need to navigate, instead, JavaScript says, oh, wait a minute, so you need this other screen? Okay, that's fine. I'll hide the current screen away, and now I am going to replace it with some other screen, right, that has some other content, but never actually throwing away, right, the old HTML. Right? I can cache it, I can leave it, I can flip back and forth between two versions of the screen. Yes? Right? Essentially giving the same functionality of navigation, but using an entirely different mechanism. Make sense? Right? So we're going to stick to this new mechanism, right, of the single page application for the remainder of the semester. Right? We're never actually going to replace an HTML document, only for the first assignment, and then never again. Right? So second, third, and so on and so forth, those are all going to be strictly single page applications. All right? And that's going to be a technique that we'll do for React. The same thing we'll do for Angular, and then we would do Vue.js, we'll do the same thing. Yes? No, the URL does change. So the first HTML does not change, right? So index or whatever, right? But after that, we use a mechanism that has been in place for quite a while. We put a hash at the end of the URL, and then after the hash, we're free to put whatever we want, which is interpreted by the browser as you want to be in the same page, but in some other section of the same page. And then what Angular and React and all these libraries do is that they build an entire infrastructure around how to handle that hash, right, to provide the same navigational mechanisms. Yep. All right. All right. Okay, excellent. Let's leave it here. Thank you.